the panelist. Next, Professor E. Bijoy Kumar Singh, Director, CSSEIP, Manipur University, our next panelist. The next panelist, Professor Homen Thangjum, Assistant Professor, Indira Gandhi National Tribal University. Professor Homen Thangjum. May we invite Professor E. Bijoy Kumar Singh? Oh, sorry. Okay. May I request Mr. Sabya Sachi Datta, Honorable Executive Director, Asian Confluence, to kindly felicitate the chair and the eminent panelist of panel 2. Professor N. Rajmohan Singh, Vice Chancellor, Dhannamanjari University. And now, over to the chair.
A very good morning to all of you. Sorry. Esteemed panel members and ladies and gentlemen, we all heard about the panel 1. It was very exciting. And in this panel 2, we have the agenda, assessing development paradigms, potential challenges, and the way forward for meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. Yeah, this 2-day conclave is very, very important and very much pertinent in this part of the region also. And yesterday, even in the inaugural address, our Honorable Chief Minister has highlighted very nicely about the importance of East policy while explaining the need to finalize various aspects of policy, including states' responsibility, infrastructural development, and benefits for the state entrepreneurs, etc. And he also expressed the confidence that this 2-day conclave would certainly come up with a concrete blueprint or roadmap and provide deeper insights of strategic landscape and development trends. In this second agenda today, since it involves Sustainable Development Goals, and it is partly related to Sustainable Development Goals 2030, and in this conclave, I hope that our panelists will explain very nicely about the policymakers and academia and business stakeholders and practitioners and civil society's role in this area also. And while we are discussing about these Sustainable Development Goals, I think 3 things are very, very important. Number 1 is social issues. Second one is the economic issues, and the third one is environmental issues. And these 3 cannot be forget. So in discussing about the Sustainable Development Goals, we have to touch these 3 areas also. And in the morning session, while we are discussing about the connectivity, and being the corridor of this Act East policy, we also think about 3 points. Number one is, what I would like to say is that while there is a trans-boundary migration of the chemically toxic elements, we have to think that the Basel Convention should be used. To using the Basel Convention, the trans-boundary movement of the hazardous elements or things to be discussed. And secondly, this part of the region, as we all know, being the hotspot, Indo-Myanmar hotspot region, we have enough resources. So we are very much having potentials. We have great hope on this area that the diversity issues, biodiversity issues, we have enough floral and fauna diversity in this part of the region, particularly northern region, including Manipur. So now, we all know that many of our endemic species, including endemic species, many species are pirating from this part of the region. And many species are coming from other parts of the country through Myanmar, that exotic species are coming in this part of the region. So this CITES principle, Convention on International Threat on Endangered Species, is also very much relevant in this while we are discussing about this, our floral and fauna diversity of this part of the region. And moreover, the third point is, after coming World Trade Organization, WTO, and trade-related intellectual property rights, what is the impact of these WTO and TRIPS in this part of the region, particularly northern region and Manipur? There also, I think, we have to touch these areas also. And I hope that this 2 days conclave is mentioned yesterday also, and today in first morning also, a vibrant, dynamic, and prosperous and a resilient Northeast is the India's strength, and the region has the potential to be growth engine for the country in the 21st century. Particularly, this is the dream of our Honorable Prime Minister also, and it is the dream of our Honorable CM also. So I think today, I hope that our panelists, except one is on the way, I think, Thangjam Homen, and two are here now. And so I would like to start from the first panelist, second, this one. I would like to call upon Muhammad Nur Rahman, Sheikh, JS Economic Diplomacy, Ministry of External Affairs. Sir, please take your own time, please. So please confine to the time schedule. You are given 15 minutes time for presentation, and then later we will have this question hour later. Yeah. Please.
Thank you, Professor, for setting the tone for this session. Dignitaries I acknowledge our ambassadors, Rajibhatia sir and Madam Riva here, and my colleague, Dr. Sumit Seth, JSPPR, and all the dignitaries present here, professors from academia, intellectual think tank, Asian Conference, and everyone else. To give it to 15 minutes would be difficult, but I'll still try to make it within that time frame. As we all know, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, there was a lot of work that was done actually before the adoption of the SDGs, as we in short call as Agenda 2030 in 2015. It was adopted in September 2015. I was fortunate that, of course, I was not part of the discussions prior to it, but I was posted in our mission, PMI in New York, from November onwards of that year. So that was the hot topic at a time, like Agenda 2030 was the talk of the town. In all fora that you go into, there was this immense focus on Agenda 2030. Of course, the overarching focus on eradication of poverty being agenda number one, and that's the whole context. Yeah, I think it's working. Yeah. Uh, I think we can resume. So I was just saying, Agenda 2030 has been predominant since the time it has been adopted. And of course, we all know there are 17 goals, SDGs, the overarching being eradication of energy. Currently, of course, we all know the focus we all have in terms of, besides eradication of poverty, in terms of clean energy, access to energy, climate change, priorities and things like that. They have a lot of work that Government of India has done in terms of the fulfillment of the objectives under SDGs. In 2019, June, a dashboard was developed. Of course, in India, Niti Aayog is the body which basically handles in terms of coordinating various indicators, framing the national indicator framework and things like that. In all of this, the whole focus has been localization of the SDGs. That's where Professor was mentioning how this the SDGs could be linked to, say, this region, which is a hotspot of resource availability, connectivity, the, say, WTO provisions, the TRIPS provisions on biodiversity, so many things. So the whole focus of the exercise that the Government of India has undertaken, Niti Aayog has undertaken, a lot of interministerial stakeholder, and it started as a whole of government approach. Thereafter, it got shifted into the whole of society approach. So it's just not the government, or just not the ministries and at the, either the union or the state level, but it's all now whole of society approach that we take in terms of SDGs. And of course, we volunteer to have this national volunteer reviews of the SDGs. As far as the SDGs are concerned, up to 2030, every country is expected to volunteer for 2 reviews. And we have already done that, one in 2017 itself, and another one in 2020 June. So we have completed that mandatory requirement of, of having two voluntary reviews. Now, in terms of the various initiatives that Government of India has taken, these are all, if you try to link up between the SDGs and localization and the overall national development framework, you will find that whatever initiatives government has taken has a connotation towards the fulfillment of our SDGs. Say, for example, if you say smart cities, Make in India, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Swachh Bharat, Jan Dhan Yojana, Digital India, Skill India, Startup India. Recently, you have the Gati Shakti, National Logistics Plan, National Infrastructure Development Plan. If you see all of this has a connotation towards fulfillment of our SDGs. In fact, when this was adopted, the assessment we made, government made, was from 2013 to 2030. 750 billion would be like the investment in railway infrastructure, for example. There is this India, had expressed this intent to invest about $1.4 trillion in infrastructure between 2019 and 23. Of course, the COVID pandemic had its own effect in all the sectors. We are all aware of it. But then now there's a way of, coming back to its original goal plans as well. Like various countries, I also acknowledge that there are representatives from some of the missions, particularly neighboring from Southeast Asia. There has been a focus certainly on connectivity. I'm sure the previous session had covered various aspects of it. There is this constant attempt to link up connectivity with various other aspects of it. In terms of, say, for example, if you would all be aware, the concept of one sun, one world, one grid is in sort also work. That's a concept under International Solar Alliance. Prime Minister has been emphasizing about this concept of also work time and again. And there is now a task force which is now working to see that the grid, the Indian grid is linked to the Southeast Asia. So there's a lot of priority being given there. So idea is like basically to link up, say, India's grid to the Southeast Asia. This is one part of it. Then you link up from India to the Gulf, and then goes into Europe and things like that. Then of course the African part. So the whole point is this is a sort of contribution to make disaster, the climate change, or make it as a sustainable development, a feasible option for everyone. So this is an aspect where focus is there in this part of the world. There are, of course, we all know a lot of targets. There are about 169 targets on central ministries as part of SDGs. There are just centrally sponsored schemes and various initiatives. There is a lot of sub-indicators and indexes that are already in place. So whenever any initiative is undertaken, these are all linked, as I said, to the SDGs. There is another initiative which is known as, say, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI. It's another initiative by our Honorable Prime Minister, started in September 2019. There are 31 countries which are now members of this. Bangladesh is one of the recent countries which have joined this initiative. There's a lot of focus again on this. This is basically to bring in disaster resilient infrastructure studies being carried out in various countries around the world. These are, the one I said about also work is under the International Solar Alliance, another initiative by Government of India as part of the climate change initiatives that we are doing. There are more than 110 countries which have signed this particular initiative. So these are some of the initiatives which we are taking at a global level as well. And then you have this at the local level and various national levels. Those are some of the initiatives which are ongoing. At the same time, if you see in terms of the economic recovery that India has been trying to achieve, particularly post-COVID, the Gati Shakti has these huge plans for connecting throughout the country. There is a national logistics hub which has been created. There were times when you had this. If you want to have an investment in a logistic project, you had about 1,600 layers of licensing or approvals required. Now you can go through this logistic hub and then get it cleared in as soon as possible. There are various initiatives which are, as I said, not just the whole of government approach, the whole of society approach. So I'm very happy that this particular conclave has brought in SDGs as one of the topics for discussions with, of course, in the presence of this August gathering. I see that there is this, this concept of having a circular economy, for example, or having something like India as the world's pharmacy. India is supplying COVID to so many countries, COVID vaccines to so many countries around the world. This is a time when we are one of the few countries which is focusing on sustainability for the whole humankind. When countries had vaccines manufactured, but then were hoarding for whatever reasons, could be commercial or otherwise, whereas we in India was taking the lead and initiative to benefit the humankind. So this overall aspect of having equality of the humanity, of reducing regional disparities, bringing in sustainable development, bringing in fair trade system. If you see, for example, in the World Trade Organization narratives, when in 1990s, 1998 to be precise, when the ITA, the Information Technology Agreement was signed, there was a huge debate which said that India had signed it, and hence it gave a void to allowing hardware manufacturing from coming into India. Of course, India became an IT superpower. That's thanks to ITA, one we could say. However, there was a lacuna indeed, and when ITA 2 was discussed in WTO in 2000s, India was a lot of hesitant to come on board on that. So there are a lot of debate which says whether we go in for our national development only, or go in for balance of issues, taking other aspects, other various other like just not being a country specific, have a general sustainable aspect as well. The third round is already, of course, is ongoing in WTO. We are obviously having reviews on how to take it forward. This is just an example. Of course, you would have seen India is going in for free trade agreements with various countries. We just said with UAE, there is it is final stages of conclusion with UK. A lot of progress is there with Canada. A lot of focus is there in terms of with Australia, with ASEAN countries and things like that. Now, this whole thing of FTA gets in to ensure that our industry becomes is able to grow. We are able to contribute to the national economy. We have this sustainable growth achieved in our country. So, if you all see, so when you have industries coming into the country, when you allow connectivity to grow, logistics growing, supply chain is revived, when you have better facilities in terms of everything of infrastructure, initiatives on climate change and things like that. So basically, you look at in terms of achieving the SDG goals. You are able to play your part. You are able to tell the world that this is how you have achieved development. You have reduced your regional disparity, your imbalances and things like that. And there's, of course, a lot of focus in the Northeast. As we all are aware, there are various programs and initiatives in terms of infrastructure, in terms of power, energy, security. Of course, you would have, I'm sure, in the connectivity thing, the Trans-Asian trilateral highway would have been discussed. The India-Bangladesh, for example, pipeline, friendship pipeline would have been discussed. So, of course, we have a lot of projects with our neighboring countries. The project with connectivity project with Myanmar, the Kaladan project, with Nepal, with Bhutan. Of course, we have a lot of focus now on solar energies and wind energy with various countries. So these are the way forward. Of course, is in the state of Manipur. There's a lot of discussions that say that, for example, for skill development or say for capacity development, we should, we should explore ways of say tying up with countries of the Southeast or Far East, say with Japan or Korea. We have here in the state has a lot of potential for say providing, say manpower, particularly in hospitals and others, nursing staff and things like that. So maybe so training in foreign languages, particularly Korean and Japanese, could be helpful, for example. So this is a level of discussion which is ongoing on that. So with this kind of initiatives, with the kind of coordination going on with various countries, collaboration going on, I believe that the region has all the potential to grow, and of course India's goal and path to SDGs is on the right track. We are recovering well from the effects of COVID, and we believe that this region holds the key in connecting the rest of India to Southeast Asia as well. And maybe once the other panelists have made their presentation, we can go in for other Q&As and maybe expression of comments. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad Noor Rahman, for your excellent presentation. And Noor has highlighted very much about the national framework on the sustainable development goals regarding the first review on 2017 and the second review on 2020, sorry. And then we also highlighted about the linking of Indian grid to Southeast Asia. It is also very, very important, I think, agenda. And he also mentioned about the climate change initiatives also. And then lastly, he mentioned about the importance of this connectivity. In connection with this connectivity, the bilateral or collaborative type of works in the field of skill development and entrepreneurship, and also foreign languages and like that. So thank you very much. And now I would like to call upon Professor E. Bijoy Kumar. Yeah, please. Okay. So now, Professor E. Bijoy Kumar, Director, CSSEIP, Manipur University. Sir, please.
Professor Rajmohan, Honorable Vice Chancellor and Chairperson of this panel discussion, my fellow panelists, and all the distinguished participants in this conclave. In the time allotted to me, I will try to just discuss on two issues. The first is about the appropriate development paradigm for this region. And the second one is our experience with the pursuit of sustainable development goals in this region in general and in this state in particular. Now, first of all, what I would like to say is that the environment, the policy-making environment in the last few years has changed radically. At one time, we used to believe that we are prisoners of geography. We are landlocked and we are prisoners. But now, connectivity has changed our destiny. Now we are saying that connectivity is the destiny, is our destiny. And in fact, because of the substantial improvement in the connectivity in this region in the last few years, we are in a position to have, a real rethink about the possibilities, about the opportunities, about the possibilities in this region. And as a matter of fact, when we, in the last, actually few decades, our problem was the lack of the appropriate policy framework. We always, in fact, this was also discussed yesterday also. Our development policies, we are basically being guided by our Home Ministry and other, bodies which should not be actually really concerned with these issues. But then, after the coming of the Northeastern Council and the Donor Ministry, we have come a long way. And then also, after the publication of the Shukla Commission report, and then the vision document, the NER vision document 2020, we have actually come a long way. And we realized that we have to catch up with the rest of the country in a very, very concerted manner. But unfortunately, we have not been able to do that. 2020 is over, and we are still very much in the backyard. And of course, we realized that when the Look-East policy was actually floated, we actually felt very actually euphoric, enthusiastic about the possibilities. Even though there were lots of debate about the about the contents of the policy, how appropriate those are vis-a-vis this region. Even then, we had lots of hope. And then came the Egg-East policy, and we are very, very hopeful now that something is going to happen. And the best part of Egg-East policy is that, of course, in such conclaves, in such discourses, sometimes people talk about, please identify the industries that you have come up with under this and that. But and we feel that establishing the industries, establishing the factories is not everything. one of the most, primary requirements of breaking through this, this trap of backwardness is freeing our mindset, And that is exactly where our Act-East policy, or for that matter, the earlier version, the Look-East policy, have contributed. Now we have started actually becoming very, very confident about our own capabilities. That is a very, very important development, because from the very beginning, we have been literally, told that we don't have anything, We have to follow. We have to take what is being given to us. Now we are beginning to think that, we are beginning to realize that we can also do it. So that actually I consider to be the prime contribution, the intangible contribution of this Look-East as well as the Act-East policy. Now, having said that, as I said, our concept of our destiny also has changed because of the emerging connectivities. Now we are actually in a position to think big also, and the institutions of planning also in the country also has undergone sea changes, and in the last few years, Niti Aayog has given us the opportunity to prepare ourselves, our own plans, And it is here that we actually, we want to play a very, very important, a significant role, Now, of course, throughout the country, there is a movement of rediscovering ourselves. Nehru's discovery of India is past, Now we are rediscovering ourselves everywhere, whether it is social science, whether in science. We are talking about, rediscovering ourselves. We are trying to redefine the parameters on the basis of which we will be examining, we will be assessing our performance, So, for example, in a very recent conclave, we actually discussed about the joint family systems. And people said, joint families, how do you define joint family? We talk about a common kitchen. Now, that is not really, the basis for a joint family in a country like this. And now, basically, what I'm trying to say is that we are actually questioning, we are actually trying to redefine almost every parameter under which we have been assessed. You talk about the hunger index, and we are told that we are very, very in the low ranking position. But again, we actually we counter it by saying that, what do you think of a country which has fed, as crores of people free of cost during this pandemic, I mean, how are you measuring in this session? So what I'm saying is, these issues are actually also being extended. These thinkings are also being extended to our region also. So we want to have a rethinking. We want to have an exercise of reimagining the development paradigms of this region, And we should be given a chance for doing that. And you see, when you talk about the appropriate policy paradigm, again and again we hear, after lots of discussions, after lots of, this thing, we again and here and heard that what will be our appropriate industrial this thing? We have to go for the agro-based industries, agro. So, I mean, we feel really very frustrated because, if you look at the development history, of course, Simon Kuznets had talked about, this structural changes going from primary to secondary and tertiary. But then, in the recent decades, Roderick has said that the stylized fact of development is that only those countries grow very, very fast which go for manufacturing. Manufacturing, that too, not specializing on anything, going for diversifying, diversified policies, So what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to actually share with this august body is that the environment of policy making has changed. At one time, we used to say that because of the transport bottleneck, we cannot think very, very big about those policy matters. But now it has changed. Definitely we can think now about those things. And it is in this context, we are actually trying to, float this idea. Of course, Professor Lama yesterday talked about big ideas. And that also we have been saying, but we at least what I have been telling about is we don't call it big ideas, but we call it comparative advantage defying strategy. Because, at this juncture of development process, if you are bound by your comparative advantage, which is considered to be static, then we have no future. We have to re-engineer our comparative advantage, just like the East Asian countries have done. Singapore, for that matter, Japan, South Korea, almost all. Actually, we have a number of examples where they have actually, they have not followed the guidance of this comparative advantage. They have defied comparative advantage. They have jumped the ladders of development, and they are exactly where they are now. So we also believe that we have to think in that line. And we should not. We have to try. We have to try to industrialize, of course, because the future lies in manufacturing, not in agriculture as such. And because of that, actually, we can think about such matters because of the changes in connectivity, which is going to determine our destiny. So, having said that, what I am trying to say is that we have to reimagine our policy paradigms, and now is the time. This is a very, very opportune time afforded by our history. This is a time for rethinking, time for reimagination. So this is where we have to contribute. And in fact, when in the last few months also, actually I came to know about this term, Indo-Pacific. First time in Guwahati, there was an international conference. And actually, after some reflection, I actually, of course, our ambassador yesterday, Rajiv Bhatia, was talking about, from look east to egg east to this thing. Now I'm just thinking, why can't we keep this as egg east and Indo-Pacific? Egg East and Indo-Pacific, because this is an area, this is a region where not much research has been done in the real sense. Now, the experience of the last few years of Egg East policy should be properly examined. Of course, that is what my colleague, Professor Priyanjan, also has mentioned. We have to assess our performance. We have to assess. We have to understand that. And only after that, it makes sense. Otherwise, there is no guarantee that the central position that NER has in the Egg East policy can be maintain, sustain in the Indo-Pacific thing. Because in the Indo-Pacific, this thing, discourse, all the countries, they have their own objectives. ASEAN has its own objectives, Australia, own objectives, then this is own objectives. Even India is also has its own agenda. So then in that case, at one pace, this used to be a region where there was a lack of policy framework. Now we are flooded with alternatives. This should not actually confuse us. So what I request, what I want to make an honest request is that we should try, because the East policy was initiated only in the 2015, that's 7 years time, 7-8 years time. Now that is actually not a very, very long time for a proper analysis of any policy. So therefore, we actually need some time because we always felt that this region, which used to actually thrive quite well at the time of independence. If you look at the economic history of India, you will find that Assam was doing much better than many parts of the country. But now we are actually very much in the laggards now. Now, so we should be given that chance, and we actually this Indo-Pacific is fine. That because there is a demand for these international communities, foreign policy. But then, we always want, a proper experiment with, policy, which gives the central position to this region. That will actually arouse the genius of the people in this thing. So that is what I want to make. I want to say about the policy paradigm and about the sustainable development goals. Of course, I was fortunate in the sense that, as soon as the sustainable development goals were announced, I was entrusted with the responsibility of developing the vision document for this state, Vision 2030. And that was supposed to be done in about 3 months' time. But actually, it took more than 3 years. Because at that phase, the vision document was to be based on sustainable development goals, and the sustainable development goals were not very, very properly identified at that time. The indicators were there, very vague indicators, and looking for the counterparts in the country also, it took lots of time. So it was only after the Niti Aayog came up with the first Sustainable Development Goal Index in 2019, we could actually finalize that document. But what I'm trying to say is that Sustainable Development Goals actually very, very ambitious thing. You have so many goals, and for the first time we are talking about development in the real sense. Earlier we used to talk about development in per capita income. We used to talk about development in our life expectations, like that. But now we are talking about development in a very, very comprehensive manner. Of course, the scope also is going to become larger and larger as we try to understand the process of development. Now, what I'm trying to say is that in that process, except for Assam, except for Sikkim, the other states of the northeastern region have adopted a very, very that business as usual approach to these issues. I consider sustainable development goals to be a very, very challenging things, because we are talking about localizing the development goals. And in fact, in the next few days or so, we are going to have. I am working with all sorts of bodies, in this connection. But the only thing is that from the government side also, from the government side also, lots of things need to be done. We are actually almost without any communication with the government side on what is happening in the development of those local indices. And we are actually going on our own now. We are left on this thing. Finally now, we have come up, or Niti Aayog has come up with what we call the Sustainable Development Goals for the Northeastern region, separately. Now that again is actually besides the point. We would like to have, a sort of, comprehensive, index for all the states in the country where they can be, seamlessly compared. If I say I have a set of index which is applicable only to the northern states, you cannot compare it with Maharashtra, you cannot compare it with Himachal Pradesh. That actually also is not going to solve our problem. We want to have sort of a comprehensive index. Of course, there is a big challenge, and out of the 169 indicators that the Sustainable Development Goals came up in the first place, we have only about, the Niti Aayog has been using only about 115 indicators. Lots of indicators are still missing. And here also, we don't have the proper, institution for, developing that database. You see, the data generating institution in such, backward states are in a very, very pathetic position, And if we are told to believe, if we are made to believe that, the data generated by these machineries are credible enough, if they pass through Niti Aayog, that again is not going to serve the purpose. We want the real data. And in fact, for the central government also, they have this habit. They have the habit of glossing over our data requirements. So for example, many of economists will realize that from 1972 to 2009, our poverty index was not our poverty index. It was the poverty index of Assam. But we somehow went on with that. Only after the Tendulkar Commission came, we got the proper figures for these states. So what I'm saying is, now we have a time, we have the opportunity for having a serious rethink on the possibilities, on the opportunities, because only then this region will be able to contribute the maximum to the country. You cannot actually you cannot impose development on this region if they are not connected with the people. This connectivity actually, when we talk about connectivity, we talk about only the physical connectivity also. This mental connectivity also has to be there. And in the Shukla Commission report, we had talked about several deficits, but the trust deficit was something we left untouched. So what I'm saying is, those things also should be taken care of. Now this is a golden opportunity for having a rethink on all the possibilities. So we should actually try to take advantage of that opportunity. And of course, actually, from the states level, from the state side also, issues like sustainable development goals. These are actually not very light issues. These are very, very serious, challenging issues. Now these issues should be actually taken up on a very, very priority basis, not on the business as usual approach. Something like routine matter. That should not be done like that. And in fact, only today I was sharing some information with some of the very close associates with the authority. They said there are always already some proposals coming for having the counterpart of Niti Aayog at the state level. So that also will actually be of great help in realizing the potential of this region. We want that this region should grow as fast as possible. We want that this region, by growing as fast as possible, will be able to handle many of the, this thing, what do you call, collateral issues, like,
please.
yeah, like security and others, And so these are some of the issues that I would like to, I wanted to share with you. And once again, I thank the organizers also for giving me this opportunity of sharing my thoughts, particularly the members of this Asian Confluence, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vijay. You had presented a very nice lecture, and your views are very, very important. You had mentioned about the institution of planning. There is a sea change now, and then now need of rediscovering ourselves everywhere, and redefining of the parameters and assessing. All these are very, very important, you mentioned. And from the agro-based industries, now we have so many structural changes, and now our future lies only on manufacturing, not only on the agro-based industries. You mentioned, very important, yeah, very, very important. And you also mentioned that competitive advantage and re-engineering is also very, very important. And in addition to this Indo-Pacific, you also suggested that it will be far better if we include Egg East and the Indo-Pacific. So this is your own views. Is also important, I think so. And coming to these Sustainable Development Goals, I think you had involved very much about producing the Vision 2030. That was very, very important document for the state of Manipur. And you also mentioned about the need of localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. And a comprehensive index for Northeast region is also very, very important. And it is very much needed also. And lastly, you mentioned that even state counterpart of the Niti Aayog is also need of the hour. Thank you for that. Yeah. So thank you very much, Professor Vijay. And now we have the last panelist, Dr. Homen Thangjam. And I think Dr. Homen, I think our panelist, he came a bit late because of there is some misunderstanding between the timetable. He was suggesting that it should start from 1:30. That's why he came a bit late. Anyway, please continue, Professor Homen.
Thank you very much, Oza. And first of all, my apology for the kind of dress I'm in, and also for coming late. There was a miscommunication. Thank you once again, the chair, Professor Rajmohan, Mr. Hassan, and also Oza Bijoy and all the dignitaries and delegates who are present in this very, very important deliberation that we have been having since yesterday. My take on this issue of development and rather sustainable development is going to be micro, but beginning with a understanding of the macro that has been happening in Southeast Asia, or rather we can say across the globe. The 90s and 70s was a time of a heated argument, or rather a debate on what constitutes development, and also what is the role of the state, and also whether democracy is an important ingredient for bringing about any understanding of development that the humanity has in their mind. Theda Scott Paul and many other scholars talk about 3 C's for democracy and also for bringing back the state. To put it briefly, the role of the state, many of the developing countries, if we divide the world into 3 categories, today it's a obsolete word, but still we tend to use it. In the context of the developing countries that were under colonialism and recently gained their independence, one of the very important premises was the role of the state. Why the state? Because for these poor countries, the state is the site where the wealth of the nation presides. But a problematic aspect of this understanding still today is, if the wealth is with the state in the name of the people or the popular, then who shall be the key players to manage this wealth? And from this problematic question came out many of the real politics, people who want to occupy the positions of power, leading to this stability and also many of the coups and many of the emergence of so-called authoritarian regimes. But looking back from the 1990s after the LPG, there was a paradigm shift again, and many tended to regard it somehow, if we look into the experience of the Asian tigers, without democracy, they have succeeded. And that too, in terms of the GDP, these are the rich nations. Then again, at this time and the conjecture, something also happened in India, which was Bijoy and many of the speakers might have spelled out about the developmental paradigm that was happening in the northeastern region of India, including Manipur. Still, people believe that democracy is important, but there are many who believe that, no, it takes time. The real time of business doing, often in a democratic regime, is time-consuming, is bureaucratic, and thereby any kind of speedy development, is lost in time. Whatever may be the case, India has stood as an epitome of a democracy, and also in its ability to bring about certain iotas of development. And in the process also somehow it has excluded, that we have to accept. That is what Professor E. Bijoy Kumar has tried to share with us. And coming to this understanding, why we were excluded, is perhaps many of the sociologists, and in fact, today, it is predominantly the sociologists who are talking about another form of development. Because the world has been lost for a long time in the world of the economists and the political economies and the traders and businessmen. Thereby, many have failed to understand the real needs of the society. And one of the arguments in this case is Emily Durkheim's understanding of the sacred and the profane. I'm not going to talk about the religion and what he talked about religion. But any group of human beings have an understanding of what is bad for them and also what is good for them. Perhaps it might belong to the realm of the impossibilities, in the sense of saying that this is not the real, but imagined or rather mythical. But every society has progress on this plank. On one side, there is the issue of the taboo, which, for example, for the Métis, if we talk about, there are foods a particular clan cannot eat. There are days on which bamboos cannot be cut down. There are seasons in which certain animals cannot be killed, and even vegetables cannot be consumed. And again, there are certain ingredients for a particular deity, certain ingredients in the form of plants or animals are offered to these deities. And that was driven by the idea of the profane and the sacred. And why this is important is because many of the planners and many of the economies have tended to forget about this aspect. But still, the language of the Sustainable Development Goals, ultimately, many of the sociologists believe that boiled down to this very idea of the sacred and the profane. That is why instead of using the word development again and again, why the idea of sustainability. The Meitei life world, for example, to begin with, has an understanding of the 8 directions, which is very confusing, people might say. And every direction has a deity to whom the common Meiteis, for example, let us say the valley dwellers, give a kind of obeisance. And to these gods, they pray for fortune and also, to get away from many of the, the evils of the world. And this, why the sociologists are trying to link is the very idea of food we eat, which is very different from the idea of a formatted kind of foodstuff that we have in this global world. For example, cereals are cereals without taste in the name of healthy food. Colas are all the same. You drink it in USA, you drink it in Manipur. Coca-Colas are the same. But what sociologists call the root metaphor, the very idea of having a nation, the very idea of having a culture, ultimately boils down to some aroma, certain smells, like the Meitei people are, the lovers of the evil smells, like fermented foodstuff, fermented fish, fermented bamboo shoot, without which it cannot be called a nation, or without which it cannot be called a nation with a civilization. But why is that many of the economies have tended to forget, or rather, skeet away or side away from this sociological understanding? Why I'm trying to bring in this small issue or very mundane understanding is, today the sustainability or sustainable development goals demands that there should be no hunger, for example, one of the components. And still we policymakers and even some parts of the academia are lost into the very world of finding out the proper indexes. That was not so once upon a time. The infant mortality rate in Manipur is, you can say, children do not die in Manipur, you can say. One of the, the best part about Manipur is the child mortality rate is very, very low. And this is because of something we call having a social capital. Once upon a time, before the imposition of the Armed Forces Special Power Act. But today every house is bounded by walls. In the name of insecurity, in the name of threats. There were times in our childhood, a lactating mother, if it is very less, the society or the village could identify another lactating mother and feed the child. The child doesn't go hungry and do not die. These sociological important elements, what we call the social capital, has to be part of the developmental, kind of paradigm that the government of India shapes. The very idea of the relationship a community has with the nature, not with the environment. Environment is man-made, just like we are making it. Nature is nature. We are not able to link it. In the process, we are losing lakes, we are losing water bodies. They are no longer Kongwa River, they are no longer Nambul River. These have become a river of a different kind in which people can dump anything. So the slow or the gradual way, pulling away from these commons or the assets that we have in the name of development and economics is not going to help us in the long run. And if we have to be part of these sustainable developmental goals and achieve it, it becomes, I believe, important that every institution has to partake what the tradition has kept in store with them. And people are talking in the language of the indigenous knowledge today, but not only the visible or the tangible ones, but the intangible aspect. If we can somehow incorporate it within the paradigm of development, at least there will be no hungers, I believe. We cannot be lost in the world of the data mining, in which, again, Oza Vijay Kumar has identified, we are still after, laudable data, reliable data. But we are not getting it because educational institutions of higher learning are not getting enough fund. Where are the data today? Data of any society, any state, or even India is with Reliance, with Airtel, with Nippon Company, with any of the MNCs. If we want data, we have to buy from them, and that becomes another meaning of data mining. So in the context of all this, and I'm not going into the policy aspect, what I wanted to, kind of share with this August gathering is taking up something from the society that has, been, using it as a tradition or as a part of their life world can be important in trying to develop a kind of society, or rather in your language, a developed society, where there should be, enough money. And so the very idea of sustainability, if we want to bring in this context again, is creating a kind of balance between the wealth creation, and this wealth creation cannot be at the cost of the humanity. Many are saying that again today, but it also has to take part the intangible, the wealth that we have. I want to go much into deeper because many professors and also, renowned policymakers have emphasized on the importance of, bringing out an alternative development document for this state and also for the region in the context of the connectivity and the making the aegis policy workable so that our people get some money. Let us move beyond it. And earnestly, like the sociologists have said, it's time to reimagine, not from the, the perspective of religion and understanding of what is profane for humanity or for the Manipuris. Although it has lots of religious communities, faith affiliations, the aspect that has been driving the society for ages. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Homan. Dr. Homan also mentioned many important things. He started at the outset, whether democracy is an important element for development. And then he also mentioned that the role of state is also very, very important when we are discussing about the sustainable development goals. And he mainly emphasized, very much emphasized as a sociologist too, the importance of traditional knowledge or indigenous knowledge and rituals and culture. Yes, Belém Declaration, Chiang Mai Declaration, Bangalore Declaration, even Rio Summit Agenda 21 also emphasized very much about the importance of indigenous knowledge and indigenous people. That's how from 1995 to 2004, 1 decade was observed as International Decade for the Year of Indigenous People and Indigenous Knowledge. So while we are considering about this indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge, this part of the region, now this region, particularly in Manipur, we have enough traditional knowledge in terms of healing properties, a healing system, fooding system, and many others. So much cultural diversity is here in this part of the region. So we should not forget about this indigenous knowledge or indigenous people itself while we are discussing about the sustainable development goals. And also while we are discussing about connecting the connectivities. With this background, I think that there is still we are having some time. We can have some question and answer. If any question or queries, please. Yeah, Dr. Narayan, please.
So, can you suggest your plan for preparation to be done for next 5 years for Aegis policy in Manipur?
Okay, very well. Oh, any more questions, please, then? Yeah, please, sir.
Just an interaction, or rather, to all this. It's regarding the 2 points that Oza Bijoy has taken is about the comparative advantage, and Homen Thangjam has spoken of something, I feel it is more important. I would like to share some of the interactions I had with the planners. I think before 2 years, they happened to be from this called whoever was planning the Amravati. They're from the Singapore. So we are proposing that we need a substantive, holistic planning for the whole of the Manipur, or rather the Imphal Valley. Yes, when the India had landed down in Imphal, just like one of our panelists in the morning also said, they felt something different, right? So what was, see, when we are talking about the paradigm shift in developmental goals, we have got something which others don't have, or others lack it. Just like Homen said about the Homen Thangjam has said about the, what consists of development, right? Is it the wealth alone? Is it the cars? Is it the buildings? So we have the forests, we have the lakes, we have the rivers, we have the nature, which is comparatively, it's more, scarce now. We had a system whereby rivers were flowing down. It was inundating every year, making our soil fertile, whereby we get the rich and that, those, what is called, with tasty, various things. So why not in our developmental goal, why not we make this, emphasize on this rather than like going into the, in a more, what you call, in some way we can say that in the world we have enough cars so that we have got enough of the wealth. But what has, in the process, what we have destroyed is our own existence, or our own part of existence. So can we emphasize on this? Can we balance that, as Homen Thangjam has said, that is the biggest, courage that you want to take the stand, the policymakers to stand, or academicians should be able to stand on that. Right, thank you.
Sir, please.
Thank you, Chair, for identifying me. I have a straight question for Mr. Noor Rahman Sheikh, our Joint Secretary from MEA. And this is about, a very good capture of developments about the SDGs that he presented. Experts now believe that the combined impact of COVID-19 pandemic and Ukraine war is that the timeline for 2030 will probably not be met, and that there could be a time lag of 5 to 7 years. First of all, is that a correct assessment? And secondly, if it is so, then what are we thinking as to how to improve situation with regard to that? Thank you.
Last, please. Last question, this will.
Thank you, Chair, sir. Very interesting session. Very wide, bigger issues raised by Mr. Noor, and again, local, regional issues raised by Professor Singh and, of course, Professor Oman. I would like to highlight slightly a technical issue today, because we have been working on these issues as to develop some kind of policy interventions at the very, very local and the regional level.
You know, when you have a connectivity with a country which may or may not be friendly to you, right? We have other dangers also. We have not only the prospects, but we have other vulnerability. We may get into vulnerability box also. They call it dependence corridor also. And we have seen this happening in the entire Himalayan belt. For example, our seeds, our genes are taken, pirated to other countries and taken to their labs, genetically manipulated, and they send back seeds which are infertile as far as second generation use is concerned, right? And they send us seeds that requires a technology, that has a technology known as gene terminator. That means you can use that seeds only to produce for that particular season. Next time you will have to bring that seeds again from the same set of institutions or organizations. The serious disadvantage of these seeds are that once you bring these seeds and propagate in your local fields, it brings new varieties of pests, new varieties of diseases where you have no control, right? That has happened in Sikkim as far as oranges are concerned. That has happened in case of Bhutan and Nepal as far as, and Sikkim also as far as the large cardamoms are concerned. So this has a much larger thinking that you first capture market, then you capture the producing fields and make them dependent as much as possible on a country which manipulates these genes through genetic gene piracy. And I can see that in the Northeast also widely happening. Taking example of just marigolds, flowers, you had fabulous varieties of marigold flowers in the Northeast, chrysanthemum also. Today, almost all the states have similar varieties of one-time growing marigold flowers. You have seen that. Very, very dangerous thing. My question to the panelists is, how do we deal with this? My second immediate question is, sir, we have very interesting practices in the Northeast. The indigenous technologies, the organic practices and all. And among these practices, we have the best practice of slow food as against the Americans' fast food, British fast food. We have a practice of slow food, highly indigenous to our character. Now, how do you globalize this local practice of slow food so that it happens from, it just reverses the process of globalizations. Instead of localization of globals, like the cars and the Microsoft, we will be globalizing our locals in this case. How do we go about it? Because that is also a part of the entire sustainable development debate and of course the connectivity activities. Thank you.
Sir, from whom you want to give the answer? From whom you are asking?
Any of the panelists.
Any of them? Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, please. No, I think first asked by Narayan, Dr. Narayan.
To Dr. Narayan's question, actually, as far as the Act East policy is concerned, what I would like to recommend at this stage is that we should have a very, very, honest assessment of the achievements of the policies so far. As I said, 7-8 years is not a very long time for the proper assessment of any policy, but that has to be done. And on the basis of that, we can identify the contour of the future policies, So that is exactly what I want to suggest at this stage. Until and unless we do that, then, most of the things will simply turn out to be, tall talks, So that is one thing. And and regarding Jagat's about the various indicators, as I said, so far, the Sustainable Development Goal has been one of the most comprehensive indicators of development, But that is not the end. Many other indicators, many other goals are also coming up in the next few years, So, for example, Amartya Sen would love to have, freedom from fear is one of the goals, of development, which we have not been able to reflect appropriately in this index, But again, the only alternative index that has been widely discussed is the Gross Happiness Index from Bhutan, Now that actually also is very interesting because Bhutan, even though it is a very, very small country, is a very, very happy country, So that Gross Happiness Index also is also another, candidate for discussion, And regarding Ambassador Bhatia, sir, actually it was not a question to me, but I just wanted to say that actually when we did this plan for the Sustainable Development Goals, we thought the first 5 years from 15 to 20 would have been spent on preparing for the implementation of the goal, preparing only. The next 10 years, we would be going for full throttle for implementation. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we missed the bus. But then again, there are so many mixed signals from the government side also, Now, as I said, we have the vision document for 2030, and that has been actually, more or less made outdated by the vision document for 2047, Now we have many other plans being prepared for the Amrit Kal and all that, So actually, I am also confused, actually what the government is really thinking about implementing those objectives, those indicators in the Sustainable Development Goals, Now it is all becoming mixed up, you have two goals, two time frames to pursue. So how do you reconcile that? That is one thing. And Professor Lama's comments, actually these are, only thing I can say is that I have noted down these things. I have no answer to these things, because but this issue of indigenous technology is actually going to play a very, very important role in, as I said, in the process of rediscovering ourselves. What do we have? So that actually is going to play a very, very important role in the future. So then, of course, when you have new technology, there is always a risk of coming from that, like unknown pace and all that, But those things, as I said, those things are more or less, risks that we have to take if we want to, have some change. We have to be ready for those changes. But as we say, and Homen also has mentioned about this thing, about social capital and all that, those are very, very important things. And if we can get those things properly reflected in our indicators, in our policy matters, then that would really make this region thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas Jagat, and Professor Lama also, our loving teacher in JNU. When we were students, he was a terrible wardener in Periyar Hostel. I think the angst we have against this, the kind of capitalism that we are encountering today is indeed frightening. The very idea of fast food is making our children fat, very, very fat. Our wives very, very fat. And to reduce the fat, again, they have introduced something called Zumba and the fitness center. The very idea of a living society is gradually diminishing in front of us. It is tragic. the slow food that we used to have, you know, in the afternoon, evening, Shinju, Bora, etc., is slowly, you know, losing. To the extent that the Japanese cuisine has become one of the UNESCO cultural heritage, that the very art of cooking. To make our products global again in this technologically driven world brings in the idea of marketing again, which is not something for our aged, you know, grandmothers and the aunties. So indeed, we are in a very, very frightening world, to tell the truth. And the idea of saving rivers, water bodies has been in the agenda of the government. But the very moment a development comes, and when it becomes a site of development, all the water bodies, forest areas are forgotten. Again, although we have the green tribunals, environmental clearances, I don't know, somehow, you know, development comes in a very aggressive manner. And today, why many of the nations are turning, you know, anti-global is because of the food habit also, and at the same time, how to curb the MNCs. Yes, government needs money. MNC brings in money. But how do we make a balance? So, India still being a poor country, although it has lots of promises, and many of the international financial institutions are appreciating it, and the kind of the GDP growth it is going to witness in the coming years, more than 6%, is indeed a very, very positive sign. But at the same time, for many of the localities like Manipur, which is full of structural bottlenecks, having 2-3 land laws, like Meghalaya, having multiple land laws for every tribal community, and Arunachal Pradesh having again different kinds of land laws, which again is contradictory to the national mission. So removing these bottlenecks again becomes the priority of the state governments. This is one area where the government of India cannot even help, even if they want to do big things about the states. So I think the responsibility of the state and also the communities living in these small states are having a kind of understanding of what is happening in front of us. And the kind of awareness that we want to undertake, again, is somehow stalled because of the fear component. I think fear has gripped us in many ways, in which many of the teaching, you know, fraternities cannot even speak out. So this is the time we are living in, and hopefully I believe this all will be thought away, and perhaps with, you know, this kind of gatherings, a more serious kind of developmental, you know, happenings can walk on our roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. I'll try to attempt what Ambassador Azib was asking. Of course, when the COVID was at its peak, when COVID pandemic was going on, there were a lot of studies and a lot of you know, discussions on what would be the now fresh timelines for SDGs. Of course, the assessment says that in 2030 there will be still 7% poverty still prevalent in the world. So the 0% poverty in 2030 may not be achievable now. It may have to be extended. There are a lot of discussions, G20, OECD, in various forums these discussions are ongoing. But I think the focus is, of course, to keep track of the fact that we had this impact of the pandemic, but we should not lose sight of the achievement of the SDGs by 2030. So that's even the Government of India's approach also. As we said, like Government of India changed the approach from whole of government approach to whole of society approach. That's where things are at the moment. Of course, Professor Vijay mentioned about India Vision 2047, Amrit Kal, India at 100. Those are again, of course, going on, and that's a national level initiatives, I would say. And of course, these are plans to make a lot of changes in various fields, in commerce, in agriculture, resources, science, space. So it's a whole lot of things there. In fact, at the union government level, there is a sectoral group of secretaries. There are good 10 groups of groups which are working on various verticals. So that's there. On Professor Lama's observation, I just want to share that for the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of efforts have been put in by various agencies to give emphasis on local products. One, of course, is, under Ministry of Tribal Affairs, there's this TriFit, Tribal Development Agency, which has come up with a GI, list of GIs of tribal products around the country. And this has been, catalogued and being shared with all our, for example, all our missions around the world to promote it as GIs, things like that. Another initiative in sync with that is one district, one product. It started as a concept for just 114 aspirational districts. It has now been extended to all the districts of the country. So there's another lot of focus given on that. It's a way of protecting our indigenous products, tribal products, local products, and then of course making it global. So it's like, instead of having that, global things coming and superimposing on our local products, so try to make local global, go global. So those are some of the initiatives which are very seriously pursued by the government. Of course, all our missions abroad are strongly part of it. In fact, just last week we had this head of missions conference in Kevadia in Gujarat. In fact, in Prime Minister's address to all the head of missions, he also emphasized on this aspect of promoting these products around the world. So there's a lot of work going on. It will certainly garner its own speed and energy as we go. Thank you.
Yeah, this Lama's, Professor Lama's, that question is very, very pertinent here in Manipur also, not only in Sikkim, in the whole country also. These engineers and high yield varieties are affecting a lot in this part of the region. Even in Kwaramam Bazaar, if we see how many of species are there from our local, and how many are importing from here, from other parts of the country. We have so many endemic species. Now it is very difficult to see in the market now. So it is very, very difficult issue, a very, very important issue. That's why the Bandana Shiva and the Jin campaign groups from Delhi, they are always against this. We should have the policy, seed policy. In Manipur also, I think we don't have seed policy. The seed policy is very, very important. So many rice cultivars are not available in the market, no. Not only in rice, vegetables also. So this is very, very serious problem. It affects a lot in environment as well as biodiversity. And lastly, I would like to thank the three esteemed panelists, Mohammad Noor Raman Sheikh, Professor E. Bijoy Kumar Singh, Professor Homen Thangjam for your excellent presentations. And I hope this is a successful discussion and lively discussion. Thank you very much, one and all. Thank you very much.
May I now request Professor N. Rajmohan Singh, Vice Chancellor, Dhanmanjari University, Imphal, to kindly felicitate our panelists, Professor Homen Thangjam, Assistant Professor, Indira Gandhi National Tribal University, and Professor N. Rajmohan Singh. Thank you so much for chairing panel 2. Before the lunch, we have a group photo of the chair and panelists of panel 2.